This podcast is part of E2C Network, where we share the whole Auburn experience.
Hello and welcome to War Horses, the only college equestrian podcast that watched the Berry College Equestrian live stream this weekend. I'm your host, Auburn Elvis. Let's talk about some college equestrian. So let's jump right into the action and discuss our meet recaps. The first meet to talk about, South Dakota State at Delaware State. So a couple of ECAC teams went up to Delaware State. They rode three-way meets against everybody. Looking at the stats beforehand, I thought Delaware State would win by about 3 points. Let's see how everything went. In fences, Delaware State won that one 3-2. In flat, Delaware State won that one 3-2. In horsemanship, Delaware State won that one 3-2. And then in reining, they did a little bit better. They won that one 4-1. That made the final score 13-7 in favor of Delaware State. This was a good home win for the Hornets. It got the weekend started off right for them. They got a good result, probably a little bit better than we expected on this one. For the Jackrabbits, we knew this was going to be tough. It was on the road for them against a strong ECAC opponent. Still, they hung in there for most of the meet, and in a road meet, sometimes that's the best you can hope for. Then UT Martin and South Dakota State would ride against one another. When I did the preview of this one, I thought the Skyhawks were going to win by about 6 or 8, I think. So let's see how this one turned out. In fences, that was a 2-2 tie, so here we've got the Jackrabbits doing better than expected. On the flat, that went 3-1 for UT Martin. In horsemanship, that went 4-0 for UT Martin. And in reining, that went 3-1 for UT Martin. So that made the final score 12-4 in favor of UT Martin. So this one went about as expected. The margin here was pretty high. UT Martin they're just stronger than South Dakota State this year. That's just the facts. This was a neutral site meet, so you would expect them to pretty much get this win every time. Now we'll jump over to the single discipline teams. We've got Bridgewater College over at Sewanee. So this happened on Friday. I thought Sewanee was going to win this one by about 4 points because Bridgewater they haven't won a meet in like several seasons. So it's been a while for them. Let's see how things went. In fences, Bridgewater won that one 3-2, and on the flat, Sewanee won that one 3-2. So it ended up a 5-5 tie. And Bridgewater got the tiebreaker with, I think, like 751 points to 664 points. So this was a huge win for the Eagles. Bridgewater finally gets a win this season. Their first in a long time, like I mentioned. They did it on the road, which is very impressive. So, yeah, great day for the Eagles there. For Sewanee, this was kind of a rough loss. They probably expected to get this home win, and it makes their shot at returning to Ocala a lot tougher now that they dropped this meet. Okay, now we'll go back over to the dual discipline teams. We had SMU at Oklahoma State. I really like SMU this year. I think they've had a rough opening schedule here with so many road meets. Yeah, I thought this was going to be tough for them because Oklahoma State's a good team, especially being at home. I thought that they would win by about a point or two. Let's see how things went. The day started off with fences. That went 4-1 for Oklahoma State. Then horsemanship was going on over in the Western Ring. That went 3-2 for SMU. So at the half, Oklahoma State had a lead, but it was 6-4. That's a manageable lead. If the Mustangs have a good second half, they can catch up on that. Well, didn't quite work out that way. 4-0 in the flat for Oklahoma State, and then reining went 3-1 for Oklahoma State as well. Big second half surge by the Cowgirls. They put this meet away. It wasn't even close by the end of it. What was the final score there? 13-5 or something like that. So huge home win for Oklahoma State to defeat the defending national champions at home. So this speaks really well of the Cowgirls. Now, like I keep mentioning, there is some question as to whether or not SMU is just the victim of a terrible fall schedule here. But this result suggests that while they do have a brutal fall schedule, they do seem to be a step behind at least a team like Auburn, who was able to get this win at Stillwater. And so with the Mustangs not being able to do that, you would think, okay, that does show us that the Mustangs have to get a little bit better if they want to be seen as one of the top teams this year. Over we go to Saturday's action. We've got UT Martin at Delaware State. So this is the final meet between those three teams up in Delaware. When I did the previews, I thought UT Martin was going to get about a 4-point win. Let's see how things went. In fences, it went 3-2 for Delaware State. So here we see the home team doing well. On the flat, UT Martin won that one 4-1. Okay, so kind of even so far. In horsemanship, that went 3-2 for Delaware State, and reining went 3-2 for UT Martin. So when everything was all added up, UT Martin won this one in a close one, 11-9. Probably a little bit closer than expected. The Hornets gave it everything they had on this one. They had that advantage of being at home, but still they came up a little bit short. They did win half the events in this one with fences and horsemanship, so that's definitely something they can take away from this one. For UT Martin, this was probably their biggest win of the season so far. Road wins are tough, and to get this one over a conference foe pretty much shows that they are the top ECAC team right now. And it looks like it's up to them to keep the conference represented in the national championship tournament in Ocala, because they're pretty much the class of that conference. We have a couple more single discipline meets to talk about. First one, Bridgewater at Berry. So they rode over at Swanee, and then they bussed over to Berry College over in Georgia. They wanted to see if they could keep their winning streak going. I thought Berry would win this one by about 2 points. Let's see what really happened. In fences, Bridgewater won this one 3-1, and on the flat, Bridgewater won that one 2-1. So that ended up the final score being Bridgewater 5, Berry 2. So here we got another good win for Bridgewater. I mean, they're just, 2 in a row. They bagged 2 victories here against some conference opponents. At least I think Berry is in the same conference with them. Just a great weekend from the Eagles. They've gone from not winning a meet to now they've won 2 in a row here. They're on a hot streak. For Berry, this was a winnable meet for them, and they just couldn't get it. They kept things close. I actually, like I said, I watched this one on the live stream. Very well hosted meet, so yeah, good job on that too. Then on Sunday, Berry hosted Swanee. After hosting a meet 2 days earlier, then the Tigers drive over to Berry as well. I thought Swanee would win this one by about 1 point. Let's see what really happened. In the flat, Swanee sweeps that one 4-0, and then over in fences, that one went 3-1 for Berry. So that made the final score 5-3 in favor of the Tigers. So Swanee rebounds after their tough loss to Bridgewater. It keeps them in a decent position in their conference, but they're going to have to ride even better in the spring if they want to keep climbing up in the rankings. For Berry, they came back strong in fences, but giving up all 4 flat points is just too deep of a hole to climb out of. But if they keep improving, it seems like they could get a win before the season is over. Well, that is all of this week's meets. So now let's take a look at the official Auburn Elvis College Equestrian rankings. All right, so let's take a look at the dual discipline rankings first. We'll run through these kind of quickly. I've got a few things to say about each team. So we didn't have a lot of changes, but we did have a few. Number 1 is Auburn. They're 6-0. They're 3 home wins, 3 away wins. They've got one more meet coming up at Georgia that should be pretty tough. And basically until Auburn loses, they're number 1. And even if they lose, they might still stay number 1. They're just doing that well right now. Number 2 is Texas A&M. The Aggies are 4-2. They won 3 home meets. They're 1-2 in their away meets, and they have a meet at Baylor coming up. They've got a road loss to Auburn. They've got a tiebreaker loss at Georgia, and they've got that home undefeated record. So with that, you can say they are pretty much on the short list of national title contenders. So good job, Aggies. Number 3 is TCU. The Horned Frogs are 5-3. They've won 3 home meets. They're 2-3 in their away meets, and they are done for the fall season. The Frogs are another national title contender that has been perfect at home. They have dropped a few meets on the road, but they've all been acceptable losses. Number 4 is Oklahoma State. The Cowgirls are 4-2. They have a 2-1 home record and a 1-1 away record. Plus, they've got a neutral site win, and they're about to go out to California and ride against a couple of teams. So the Cowgirls are obviously a strong team, but they did lose at home, and that does call into question how well they would do in a 3-day national tournament where they don't have the advantage of riding at home on their own horses, because if they can't beat a team with all the advantages of being at home in just a single meet, then, man, it's really tough to just keep winning and doing it on neutral horses like that. So I just don't think that Oklahoma State is one of those teams that you could say they're in that mix to win the national title. Sorry, that's just how it is. Number 5 is SMU. The Mustangs are 3-4. They're 2-0 at home. They're 1-4 away. They're done for the fall season, and like most of the teams above them, the Mustangs are perfect at home. They lost 4 of those 5 grueling road meets that they set up for themselves. But I would tell you, don't be surprised if things turn around for them in the spring season, because they get a lot of home meets in the spring. And yeah, I think they're going to just run through that schedule in the spring. So we'll see how this goes for them. But they are still one of the national title contenders because they are undefeated at home. Number 6 is Georgia. The Bulldogs are 4-2. They're 1-2 at home, and they're 3-0 on the road. They've got a home meet against Auburn coming up, and the Bulldogs really stumbled out of the gate at home, but they're looking a lot tougher these days. If they could pull off that shocker against Auburn this week, then they will have restored a lot of that early lost capital. Number 7 is Baylor. The Bears are 1-3. They're 1-0 at home. They're 0-3 on the road. They are hosting Texas A&M coming up this week, and they are the final dual discipline team that has been perfect at home. Now they're going to have to ride their best to continue to do that with Texas A&M coming to town, but technically they are still in the hunt for the national title because, like I said, if you're perfect at home, that shows that you can get it done when you need to. Now, the number 8 team, and again, this would be the last spot in the national championship tournament if the season ended today. Number 8 team is Fresno State. The Bulldogs are 3-3. They have an 0-2 home record. They're 2-1 when they're away, and they are hosting Oklahoma State this weekend. Now, the Bulldogs have obviously improved from last season, but they've kind of hit a ceiling recently. If they can beat visiting Oklahoma State this week, they will have taken another step forward towards gaining some national recognition that they would need to return to the national championship tournament. Number 9 is UT Martin. The Skyhawks are 4-3. They're 1-2 at home, and they're 2-0 away, and they are done for their fall season. They got a pair of big conference wins in Delaware this week, but they're going to need to keep improving, or at least not regress any, and just hope that the teams above them kind of keep stumbling. And that's what's going to have to happen if they want to climb up into those top 8 teams that are going to make the national postseason. And number 10 is South Carolina. The Gamecocks are 2-3. They're 0-2 at home. They're 1-1 away, and they're done for the fall season. They really didn't end their fall season very well. They seem like they're still adjusting to the new leadership for the program there, and they better get accustomed to it pretty fast because the spring schedule for them looks to be even more challenging than the fall schedule was. Now let's look at the single discipline rankings. We did have some changes here. Number 1 is Dartmouth. The Green are 4-0, 3 home meets, 1 away meet. They're in the ECAC conference, at least I believe they are. They need to update their website, and they need to add the conference meets on there, and so that we know exactly what conference you're in. But I'm pretty sure that Dartmouth is in the ECAC, so they're the only undefeated single discipline team, so they're number 1. Number 2 is Sweetbriar. The Vixens are 2-2, although that's a little misleading. They're 1-0 at home, and they're 1-2 on the road, but one of those road meets is at South Carolina, which every single discipline team in the country would lose that meet, so I don't really want to count that one against the Vixens very much. Now, they are in the ODAC team, and they're the top team in that conference right now. Number 3 is Lynchburg. The Hornets are 4-2. They're 3-1 at home. They're 1-1 away, and they are in the ODAC conference as well. Now, they need to update their website. They need to put in those spring meets, because right now it doesn't look like they have any riding that they're going to do in the spring. I know that's probably not right. So, yeah, update your website, Hornets. Number 4 is Charleston. The Cougars are 2-3. They're 1-0 at home and 1-3 away. They're in the ECAC conference, at least I'm pretty sure they are. They also need to update their website, and they need to split out and have two sections in their website, one for IHSA and all that, and then one for the NCEA meets. And then they also need to add what conference they're in and who their conference opponents are on their schedule, because it's really difficult to tell what's going on when you look at Charleston's website. Yeah, I get it that you've only had your IHSA stuff on there before, but now you got to separate that out because you're in the big leagues now. The club sport stuff, that's a different thing. Get that out of there. Put that in a separate part of the website so that we can look at your NCEA stuff and just say, okay, here's what's going on. At number 5 is Sacred Heart. The Pioneers are 1-2, and I didn't write down when that is home and away. So, oh my goodness, my notes are incomplete from this point. Sorry about that. Anyway, they're in the ECAC tournament. They also need to update their website. They got to split the IHSA out over into another section, just like Charleston needs to. And they need to add in their conference opponents so that we know what the heck's going on with the conference race. And yeah, just do some more work on your website, Sacred Heart. Number 6 is Centenary.
It's a twister! It's a twister!
The Cyclones are 2-3, and I'm not sure how much of that's home and away, but it's, some mix of that. They are also in the ECAC. They got to update their website. They don't have any scores. They don't have the original Charleston meet that they started the season off with. They got to split their IHSA schedule apart from their NCEA. They got to add the conference. Also, you need to add in your tournament, the conference tournament. Put that on your schedule. So, yeah, Centenary, come on, do some work here. But yeah, the Cyclones are 2-3. They're looking pretty good. Number 7 is Swanee. The Tigers are 2-3. They just got that win at Berry. They are also in the ODAC conference. They need to update their website as well. They need to add in conference foes, and they also need to put the tournament on their schedule so that we know that they understand they're doing that. Yeah, update your website. A lot of you single discipline teams need to update your website. Number 8 is Bridgewater. The Eagles are 2-3. They are in the ODAC as well. They need to update their website. They need to add in their conference opponents. They got to add in their entire spring schedule, and they need to add in the tournament so we know what's going on with them. So do that over the break. And the number 9 team is Berry. The Vikings are 0-2. They're in the ODAC, I believe. At least they are in their other sports. So I think they're in this for equestrian as well. They need to update their website. They don't have any scores. They need to split IHSA and the NCEA meets so that we know the difference there. They need to add in the conference opponents, and they need to add in the tournament on that thing so that we know what's going on. Well, that's all the rankings, and so now let's take a look at this upcoming action with some meet previews. Our first meet of the week is Texas A&M at Baylor. Now, this is a meet that Baylor can win. It will not be easy, but this would show us how much Baylor has improved this season if they could pull off this upset. Now, when you look at the stats, it's going to be a bit of a long shot. The stats suggest this one might be a blowout for Texas A&M, that they might win this one about 15-4. I think it'll be a little closer, maybe something in the realm of 12-7. So we'll see how that one goes. Next up, Auburn at Georgia. Now this is a big meet. Again, all of y'all are thinking, hey, Auburn's number 1. They've been winning at home. They've been winning it on the road. They got nothing to worry about. But I'm here to tell you they do have something to worry about. Now Georgia has underperformed at certain stages in the early part of the fall. And Auburn has overperformed pretty much the entire fall. I mean, they've ridden better than expected in almost every meet. So if that continues, Auburn should win. However, just going based off of the stats, I'll tell you that in fences, Auburn has about a 1-point advantage. In the flat, Georgia has about a 2-point advantage. In horsemanship, Auburn looks to have about a 1-point advantage, and reining, Georgia looks to have about a 1-point advantage. So if you add all that up, we're looking at something in the neighborhood of about a 10-9 Georgia win. So that's what the stats are suggesting here. So that's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to say, being at home, I think Georgia rides a little bit better and gets the upset. So Auburn better be on upset alert because it will not be easy at Georgia this weekend. Next, let's take a look at Oklahoma State at Fresno State. So, an important road meet for the Cowgirls. It's a conference meet, and they really want to show that they can go on the road and they can get that big win. Now, Fresno State wants to get this win so that they can stay relevant not only in the conference, but in the national championship discussion. Because, again, they've got to look better than UT Martin from here on out, or else they're going to slip below the Skyhawks. So, this is a pretty important meet for Fresno State as well. When I look at the stats, I think Fences is probably going to lean towards Fresno State by about a point, but then the flat is probably going to go to Oklahoma State by about 3. Horsemanship will go to Oklahoma State by about 1, and reining will probably go to Oklahoma State by about 3. So we add all that up. The stats are saying that we're probably looking at about a 12-6 Oklahoma State win. The next day after that, Oklahoma State's going to go over to UC Davis. In fences, the stats say they're pretty evenly matched. In the flat, that Oklahoma State has about a 1-point advantage. In horsemanship, that's about even. And then in reining, Oklahoma State has about a 3-point advantage there. So the stats suggest that this meet is going to be about 12-8 for Oklahoma State. And that's all of this week's action coming up. Now, next week, we're going to have recaps of all of this action that we just talked about, and then there's going to be one more week of single discipline meets after that. So what we'll do is when we go to that week's recap, we'll do an episode for that. We'll also go back and look at all the teams. I'll give you a rundown of how all the teams did in the fall and where they stand in terms of making it to the national championship tournament. That's what we're going to talk about in a week or two. And but for this week's show, that's pretty much everything we've got on the slate. I'm your host, Auburn Elvis. Thank you very much for listening, and war horses.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on the E2C Network. On your way out, I want to remind you to stop by e2cnetwork.com. It's your one-stop shop for all our content across our podcast, YouTube channel, and much more. To stay up to date with us, make sure you're following social media accounts such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. While our content here may always be Auburn sports heavy, if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. War Eagle.